ReZero's fourth arc, which spans the entirety of the second season, has a bit of a mixed reception in the anime community. If you bring it up online, someone is bound to mention it suffers from animation issues because of its troubled pandemic production. On the contrary, there are many out there who consider it the pinnacle of the series. I was lucky enough to watch both seasons back to back, no wait in between, so I really got to appreciate how well they flowed into each other. And to a certain degree, they feel inseparable to me. Okay, I'll give it to you that the pacing wasn't quite as good as the impeccably structured first season, but season 2 is what made me really fall in love with these characters. Watching this season was a straight-up magical experience, and I know some of you are going to call me a glazer for saying it, but it gave me a feeling unlike anything I'd felt from a TV show before. This is a video analyzing Arc 4's writing. Something, invisible ink, you know the drill. So I won't be going over lore, and I really don't care about unshaded ears. I want to narrow in on what captivated me the most, the characters. I want to get to the heart of why they left an everlasting impression on me and so many others. I'll start by going over the writing techniques it uses to make them feel so distinct and compelling. Then, I'll break down 3 of the character arcs to show what makes their development so emotionally charged and cathartic to watch. ReZero Season 2 is a masterclass in character writing, and these are the reasons why. Part 1. Voice. One thing that's impossible to miss in ReZero is how every single character has a distinctive voice. And I'm not referring to the acting here. Turn the sound off and only read the subtitles, and in most cases, you're still gonna know exactly who's speaking. Screenwriter Robert McKee describes this as character-specific talk, meaning each of the characters speaks with a syntax, rhythm, tonality, and most importantly, word choices that no one but that character would use. Ideally, every character is a walking dictionary of his or her unique collection of words. Subaru drops references to Earth-exclusive things like video game terminology, and his vocabulary is often supplemented with English words too, unlike the others. It reinforces that he's a fish out of water in this world, always standing out as different. He also has a habit of speaking bluntly and out of order. Nuance isn't paramount to him as a guy who has trouble reading the room, or in many cases, deliberately likes poking and prodding. Emilia frequently uses old-fashioned words like lackadaisical, but also has a notably limited vocabulary, opting for words like really or super duper as descriptors. It's a peculiar combination that makes sense given her backstory as a person from an older era, but also someone largely sheltered, inexperienced, and naive. Beatrice has the peculiar verbal tic of ending almost every sentence with "I suppose," but that's not the only thing that makes her voice distinctive. She talks with the temperament of a child, but her word choice isn't very typical for a child at all. I mean, really, when's the last time you heard a little kid say the word nuisance? It fits her background as someone stuck in a period of emotional arrested development, but with access to a wealth of books and knowledge. To really get across just how good ReZero is at character-specific talk, imagine any of those 3 characters swapping dialogue lines. Imagine if instead of using a word like profoundly, Beatrice said super duper. It wouldn't work at all. Their speech is so idiosyncratic and personalized, you can't mix them up. Yeah, I know this has been the case since the beginning of the series, but I think Arc 4 is a great showcase of it, so let's keep going and look at a few others. Roswaal over-enunciates and emphasizes words like a bad stage actor, but when things get serious, that theatrical affectation completely disappears. We understand quite clearly that his speaking style is performative. He's a duplicitous guy putting up an act. As McKee phrases it, a character like Roswaal's facade of talk is a doorway to his depths. Otto speaks prim and proper, but when control of the conversation is disrupted, usually by Subaru, his manner of speech very quickly changes to be fast and flustered. It tells us that beneath the formality and professionalism, Otto is really an emotional person. Garfield speaks roughly and heavily relies on idioms and expressions to articulate his points. It perfectly complements his character of someone merely posturing and projecting the image of strength. He's just a kid trying to show off and seem worldly and cool. Ryuzu talks in a stilted, matter-of-fact way and uses nicknames that refer to the others as young, like Young Su or Young Gar, which reflects her history as an ancient artificial creation of Echidna. Even the Witches of Sin, who have a relatively short amount of screen time, all have unique, easy-to-identify ways of speaking, from their strange cadences to the nicknames they give. The strong command over voice in this series has a whole other level in Japanese, with things like Echidna's pronoun usage, which differs between her past and present self. But as an English-only speaker, I can't pretend to know anything about that. That stuff goes right over my head. You get the point, though. Hey, speaking of voice, if you like my voice, you should consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you can hear even more of me in Part 2, Revelations. These next two parts are a couple techniques I've talked about before, but are very important in understanding Season 2's character writing. In my Arc 2 video, I discussed how the series makes its characters feel complex by revealing a contradiction between the way they present themselves and the way they truly are, what McKee refers to as the revelation of true character. People are not what they appear to be. A hidden nature waits concealed behind a facade of traits. Major characters cannot be at heart what they seem to be at face. In that arc, we saw this to great effect with the way the hidden depths of the Maid twins were revealed, as well as the spirit librarian Beatrice, which this season greatly expands upon as we learn much more concrete information about her. Beatrice always acts annoyed by disturbances to the library's silence. That's how she acts, but not how she truly is. Underneath that veneer, she's desperate for connection. In fact, we find out she's deliberately waiting by the door all the time specifically for someone to appear and intervene. The mask she put on to force Subaru out is clearly slipping now. Despite pretending she's completely uncaring, she finally admits that she's been suffering for hundreds of years and wants to die. Roswaal always seemed like an eccentric man with a sort of anything goes policy. He let some random sketchy kid move into his mansion and was pretty nonchalant about him getting entangled in their political affairs. Now it turns out that this whole time he's had a plan behind his actions. He's been orchestrating all the events we witnessed to further his sinister agenda. He was aware that Subaru has the power to loop and has been influencing him to use that power to achieve his goals. This is a great revelation because not only does it show us there's so much more depth to his character, but it recontextualizes nearly every previous scene with him, from weirdo to mastermind. Emilia has always been presented as a kind-hearted, selfless person. In the third arc, she declares her motivation as royal candidate is to create an equal society for all citizens. But here in Arc 4, we find out that even she is motivated by a deeper desire she acknowledges as selfish: to unfreeze the elves of Elior Forest, a devastating mistake she made in her own past. Revealing that Emilia has a personal, ulterior motive she was hiding like this goes a long way in distancing her from the perfect good girl fantasy many viewers walked away with after the first season. I think one of the truly great things about this season is that it gives so much of the cast a revelatory character moment. Echidna presents herself to Subaru as someone helpful and a shoulder to cry on. But underneath that apparent reasonableness is something inhuman. When proposing a contract, her true sociopathic, greedy nature rears its head. On surface level, Otto is a merchant through and through, always business-minded and acting in a way to turn his financial situation around. The whole reason he's involved in this arc is to negotiate with Roswaal since he's a powerful and wealthy Margrave. But under pressure, he declines Garfiel's bribe to stay quiet in exchange for an expensive stone, and instead saves Subaru from his imprisonment at the risk of his own life. When push comes to shove, his friends matter more to him than money. Rom seems like Roswaal's lapdog, always backing him up and shutting down any opposition, but she ends up defying his orders and fighting against him. The reveal isn't that she secretly considered him an enemy and was plotting her revenge this whole time. but rather that she wants what's best for him, because she's in love with him. Garfield is violent, strong, and intimidating. On the inside, though, he's just an abandoned little boy who still hasn't moved on. He acted the way he did because he was frustrated and scared at the outside world for taking away his mother. Satella, who many viewers expected would be the overarching big bad, gets one too, and it changes everything. She's responsible for Subaru's return by death, which caused him immense suffering, and his previous encounters with the witch were little more than incomprehensible vows of love and violent retaliations for speaking about it. But when actually confronting her, it turns out she genuinely cares about his well-being and doesn't want him to die or suffer at all. Oh, and she also wants him to kill her. Even though it doesn't give us the whole picture, suddenly Satella is 1,000 times more interesting, and the trajectory of the entire story shifts along with our perception of her. I know that Season 2 has a lot of talking, which turned some viewers off, but nothing was static or boring to me. It's constantly exposing these contradictions in a way that deepens the characters and reframes how we understand them. Part 3. Parallels. Another technique familiar to the series that gets elevated even further here in Season 2 is the use of mirror characters, otherwise known as clones. As Brian McDonald of Invisible Ink explains, clones are characters in your story that represent what could, should, or might happen to the protagonist if they take a particular path. Chances are you're already thinking about Roswaal. It's not like the series is particularly subtle about it. At one point, Subaru and Roswaal's faces are superimposed on top of each other. Roswaal is motivated by his love for Echidna, much like Subaru is motivated by his love for Emilia. They both place their respective love interest as the number one in their hearts, although for Roswaal that means dedicating himself entirely to that person. Everyone else is expendable, including himself in what he believes are failed loops. In this season, Subaru also starts to view his life as expendable in failed loops. They both throw their lives away so another version of them can succeed. Roswaal's goal in orchestrating the events of the sanctuary in the mansion is to force Subaru on the same path as him, but Subaru rejects that path, choosing to prioritize not just Emilia but all the others, and his own life too. Roswaal admits that he's forever looking upon the past, but Subaru overcomes this mindset and embraces an uncertain future. Echidna is a clone too. She's incapable of understanding other people and sees return by death purely as a tool to gather knowledge, without any regard for the cost. Subaru isn't as far from that mindset as he'd like to believe though. The first half of the season shows us all the ways he completely misunderstands how others feel. And he has been using return by death in the same way, treating his loops as experiments to gather information for future attempts. He was already well along the path of becoming someone like her, but like with Roswaal, he ends up rejecting it. In addition to that, both Roswaal and Echidna serve as twisted reflections of his parents. Roswaal is trying to mold Subaru after himself, which should feel reminiscent of how Subaru felt expected to take after his father, Kenichi. Of course, the difference is that Kenichi is actually a pretty cool dad who doesn't want his son to feel that pressure. Echidna's willingness to exploit return by death to find the optimal outcome, regardless of the suffering, might make you think of something his mom, Naoko, says. What matters isn't how you start or what happens in the middle, it's how it ends. Again, she doesn't actually want her son to go through hell for a perfect ending though. In fact, it's Subaru who interprets that as, you mean as long as things turn out okay in the end, nothing else matters? Which should sound a hell of a lot like Echidna's proposition. Satella, although this season humanizes her, is still shown as a parallel to Subaru's worst behavior in Arc 3, professing her love and telling him, "You gave me everything," despite Subaru having no idea what she's talking about. Her words directly echo Subaru's words to Emilia back then. "You don't even realize how the things you've done for me have saved me." the same way Betelgeuse later did when he cried out to Satella that he hadn't forgotten a single moment of the things she did for him. I love how this same sentiment keeps getting repeated across various characters. Pretty much everyone has similarities to Subaru, even if they manifest in different ways. Like Subaru, Emilia is naive, unworldly, and crushed by expectations. While Subaru dealt with being compared to his esteemed father, Emilia is compared to the detestable Witch of Envy. These are obviously not equivalent, but they both struggle with the baggage of being viewed in relation to people other than themselves. Beatrice is a shut-in, longing for purpose after hundreds of years of isolation. Instead of taking charge of her life, she thinks she needs someone else to provide her that purpose. That's not much different than Subaru's past as a shut-in, avoiding school and secretly hoping he gets kicked out by his parents, instead of taking initiative himself. Garfield, like Subaru, takes on a self-imposed burden alone. He's trying to be the shield of the sanctuary, just like Subaru is trying to shield his friends. Although, in classic Subaru fashion, instead of just shield, he describes himself as a meat shield. So many of the characters suffer from similar problems as Subaru, so their arcs all parallel and bleed into his in a really satisfying way. So now, let's get into those arcs, shall we? Part 4. Arcs. Everyone understands that a character arc is when a character changes from the beginning of the story to the end. Simple enough. But what exactly constitutes a well-written arc? The author K.M. Weiland outlines the core components that make up a solid character arc, so I'm going to apply those fundamentals to Beatrice, Emilia, and Subaru, so we can see why their growth in Season 2 is so emotionally satisfying. The last video was pretty much exclusively about Subaru's journey, so hopefully you don't mind me shining a light on some of the other characters for a bit. He'll get his turn, don't worry. To understand Beatrice's transformation, we first have to understand what Weiland would refer to as the lie she believes. Your character is incomplete on the inside. He is harboring some deeply held misconception about either himself, the world, or probably both. Beatrice is a fatalist. As she puts it, "My fate is already set in stone." She obediently follows what's laid out in her gospel, instructions for how she's supposed to live and all the actions she's supposed to take. However, her gospel stopped providing her instructions and the pages are now blank. With no clear direction, she locked herself away and waited alone for 400 years. So the lie Beatrice believes is that her future is out of her control. The origin of this lie is what Weiland calls the ghost. Ghost is movie speak for something in your character's past that haunts them. The ghost will often be a part of your character's backstory, and readers will only discover it bit by bit. Throughout the course of the season, we learn more and more details until we finally get a clear picture of what transpired to make her the way she is. The gospel was given to Beatrice by Echidna, her mother, who she trusted without a doubt. Like she explains to Ryuzu, "To me, mother is absolute." Echidna told her that eventually, that person would come to give her life direction. In reality, there was no predetermined future for Beatrice. It was all an experiment to see what she would do. Echidna then left her forever. Beatrice believes the lie as a result of misplaced trust in someone she thought was infallible. On top of that, she already went through the heartbreak of losing Echidna and Ryuzu, someone she finally opened up to. So it makes sense why she would close herself off from others after this. She doesn't want to experience that pain again. Character growth is all about overcoming that lie. It's the conflict between the want and the need. The thing your character wants will almost always be something external, something physical. He's trying to salve his inner emptiness with exterior solutions. What Beatrice wants is for that person to finally arrive, someone she thought would give her life meaning, even though she has no idea what that truly entails. Her entire future is predicated on an outsider to come and take her away, an outsider she doesn't know anything about. If that person isn't coming, she thinks she'd be better off dead. In fact, she's relieved when she learns Roswaal sent Elsa to kill her, because it means her fate was ascribed in the gospel and she wasn't forgotten about. She's waiting for meaning to be given to her instead of finding it herself. However, what Beatrice wants is not what she needs. The thing your character needs is usually going to be nothing more than a realization. In some stories, this realization may change nothing about his external life, but it will always transform his perspective of himself and the world around him. What Beatrice needs is to open herself up to life's possibilities and take control of her own life. She needs to choose her own purpose, and that's exactly what Subaru offers her. He doesn't pretend to be that person because that would only feed into her fatalist mindset. Instead, he asks her to choose him of her own volition, not because a book told her to. This scene is so powerful because when Beatrice accepts his hand, it means she's overcome the lie, her worldview has changed, and she's now made her own meaning amidst the uncertainty. Some writers prefer to call the need the true emotional desire instead because the character, deep down, may be conscious of it but is stuck in denial. Despite claiming she only acts in accordance with the gospel, over and over again, she saves Subaru's life, even though no such instructions existed. She was making her own choices, and as he points out in their final confrontation, she always waited by the door. Deep down, she desired this outcome. The season finale is great at demonstrating Beatrice's change. While previously she would always end up literally pushing Subaru away, this episode shows them working side by side, her hand tightly gripping his. In some of the very last scenes, rather than self-isolating in the library, she's out in the mansion socializing with the others. This is the new normal for Beatrice. Next, let's go over Emilia's arc, which should please that one guy who keeps commenting about Mommy Emilia under all of my videos. Keep going, please. Every comment helps. The lie Emilia believes is that she's inadequate on her own, unable to deliver on what's expected of her, and instead requires others to carry her. Puck filled that role of a caregiver for most of her life, protecting her and shielding her from the outside world. Now, Subaru is essentially trying to do the same thing. The first half of the season showcases her inability to face the trial, with others stepping in because they don't have faith in her. We get to see Emilia's dependency pushed to its absolute furthest when Subaru returns to find her completely mind-broken. I never stopped believing that you'd come to me, that if I did my best to fulfill my task, you'd come save me. That's what you've always done, after all. Her ghost is what happened to her a century ago in Elior Forest, when she witnessed the deaths of those close to her, causing her to lose control of her emotions and freeze everyone in the area, including herself. The result of which is that her childhood was taken away from her. Emilia's been sheltered from it. The traumatic part of her past has literally been sealed off from her. I left all the bad things in Puck's hands so I could forget them. That means she's never been able to process what happened and grow from it. She was frozen, not just literally, but metaphorically too. We saw that same visual metaphor used for Subaru in Arc 3 to show how he was stuck in his ways. What Emilia wants is, of course, to pass the trials, freeing the people stuck there, but on a larger level, she wants to prove her worth. However, the problem with this is it's still rooted in external validation. Most of her life is rooted in others' perceptions of her. She's continually discussed along with the Witch of Envy as if they're the same, or made to feel culpable in the witch cult's actions. When Ferris blames her for the cult's attack, she doesn't have a rebuttal, instead saying, maybe it really is my fault. No one seems to accept Emilia as she is, as just Emilia, because, well, who is she? Even she doesn't know. That's what Emilia really needs, to find herself. She needs to process her past and grow from it. Echidna's trials provide that opportunity. When Emilia says her name and declares herself the Frozen Witch, it's a big shift from being defined by others to defining herself. Of course, this doesn't mean being influenced by others is bad. When she makes that declaration, she's doing Subaru's pose. He clearly inspired her. Instead of him or Puck doing things for her, all she needed was support. Don't spoil me, just believe in me. There's some great imagery in the second trial of her looking at herself in the water's reflection. It gives the impression that this is the first time in her life she's truly seeing herself, which really makes the point of her arc as clear as it can be. She's able to withstand the third trial despite all the possible disastrous futures because they're only possibilities. Like Beatrice choosing her own future, Emilia is embracing the uncertainty of life. Now she's able to stand up to Roswaal with newfound confidence when he tries to tell her who she is. And when he loses his resolve, we get a nice inverse of their usual dynamic as she's the one with unwavering resolve. In an earlier scene with the Arlem villagers, Emilia has to earn their trust and she says she isn't worthy. Now they all rally behind her and she confidently asserts that she can do her very best. Back in Arc 3, she stood there while Subaru trampled on her will and declared himself her knight. At the knighting ceremony at the end of Arc 4, she's the one in command and speaking for herself. These points of comparison really hit home just how much she's developed. Finally, let's move over to Subaru himself, which I know you've been patiently waiting for. The lie that Subaru believes is that his life is worth less than others. The arc sets this up almost immediately when he discovers Rem's name has been erased, and without much hesitation at all, he offs himself for the possibility of saving her. Subaru believes that he's only worth something from his deaths, and when Return by Death can't resolve the issue, he feels entirely useless. As he succinctly states, "There's nothing I can use but my own life." He's so consumed by this lie that he's flabbergasted at the idea that someone else would risk their life for him, even though that's exactly what he does for others. So, what's the ghost, the origin of that thought process? It stems from his childhood insecurities, the high expectations of living up to his father, his degrading performance at school, and losing the friends that kept him the center of attention resulted in an inferiority complex. That, in combination with his use of Return by Death in the previous arcs, where he was able to successfully resolve crises by dying, was the dangerous recipe needed to form his terrible mindset. What Subaru wants is to be a dependable person, a hero for Emilia and his friends. To him, that means making everyone else's problems disappear by taking them on himself. He declares, "I'm the only one that needs to know hell. That's what I'm here for." He begins to treat loops as means and not ends, throwing his life away to gain information that can help him end the conflict at the sanctuary. Throughout the first half of the season, we see his willingness to sacrifice himself time and time again. While most of the deaths in the previous season were out of his control, here in this season, he tries to end his own life a considerable amount of times. He also undergoes the trials in lieu of Emilia. At first, he wanted her to do it, understanding that it's important for her sake. But when he realizes just how much it's psychologically tormenting her, he wants to take it over and do it himself. Even though sacrificing yourself or protecting others is a noble goal and might sound selfless, here it's not. It's egocentric. It effectively centers everyone around him and removes their own agency and input. Like Minerva tells him, deciding you're the only one who needs to suffer is cowardly. So what Subaru needs is simple. He needs to love himself more, in the words of Satella. He needs to accept that his life does have value. That's the realization he comes to. If I might have any value to them beyond my own death, I'm going to look for it. Echidna's second trial shows him how his past loops would continue after his deaths. It's horrifying, but by seeing how his deaths affect others, he's able to understand that the people he loves love him too. He puts this lesson into practice, achieving success by trusting and relying on others instead of self-sacrificing, even if it took a good walloping from Otto to wake him up to this. The fact that he doesn't die at all in the latter half of the season is another way it conveys his growth. Just like with Beatrice and Emilia, we're back to this idea of uncertainty as well. Return by Death provided certainty, but at a great cost. By rejecting it, he has to learn to move forward without certainty, purely trusting in others and himself, despite not having the best outcome guaranteed. This is just such a wonderful direction for the character, and I'm so glad it's where this arc went. It's a thoughtful rebuttal against the rather confusing argument that some had during the first season that Subaru should have used Return by Death more. His arc here is all about why that's such an insidious idea, besides the obvious reality of it being horrifying and painful that they somehow missed. In Arc 3, he embarrassingly proclaimed himself Emilia's knight due to his crippling insecurities, standing in front of her. Now, this arc ends with him triumphantly being knighted by Emilia, kneeling before her. A great comparison showing us just how much he's grown, from him at his worst to him at his best. There's such a strong sense of completion and finality, not just for him, but for all the characters. Even Garfield, who serves as an antagonist for a good chunk of the season, gets to confront his ghost, overcome the lie he believed, and become a better person. We get to see everyone go on a journey of self-acceptance and self-discovery in the face of uncertainty, which makes the whole story incredibly moving. I'm tearing up just thinking about it, man. Conclusion. ReZero's second season might not be the series at its flashiest, but it hands down has the most unforgettable character writing. The characters all have distinct voices, layers of depth, and they mirror Subaru and his struggles in so many interesting ways. The attention paid to the character development is what left the biggest impression on me. Their arcs are so perfectly designed to push them towards real, meaningful growth, and to tug on your heartstrings. On the subject of tugging on heartstrings, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful for all the support I've gotten on these videos. You guys are so nice. It's honestly amazing that there's people waiting for these to come out. If you're wondering about a Season 3 video, well, I actually already made one a year ago, before I even started these arc-by-arc analysis videos. Because it's older, it's a little different. I hadn't established the format yet, so it's less about concrete writing information like these ones are. If I were to rebrand it now to match these new ones, just think about it like a video dedicated to analyzing the themes. Even though I think I've grown a lot as a creator since then, I'm still really proud of the part about Regulus specifically. As for Season 4, I don't know if I'll keep the same format or try out something different. We'll see. We all gotta open ourselves up to life's uncertainties, right? For those of you that came just for ReZero, I hope you stick around and watch some of the other videos I'll be putting out too. But even if it's only ReZero you're here for, you'll see me again very soon. Live strong, okay?